Dear students, good afternoon everyone. So in this section we have to discussing about one of the main concepts entire of the disaster management and mitigation point of according our syllabus nothing but fifth unit. It represented fifth unit. So disaster management cycle point, the overall concept is disaster management cycle point of what kind of stages will be there, how those stages are helpful for to mitigation of the disasters point of it will be useful. So that particular concept point of first of all we should be learn about disaster management definition and disaster management act point of with regard to the concept point of first of all we have to be ready for to learn about start to learn about disaster management. So disaster management can be defined as organization and management of resource and responsibilities for dealing with all human related aspects of emergencies. In particular, preparedness, response, recovery, these steps and stages or phases reduce the impact of disaster. So disaster management definition point of it can be defined as organization and management of resource and responsibilities. What we having resources, natural resources, maybe land resources, forest resources, water resources, agriculture resources, parry resources. So what kind of any resource will be there? There all kind of resources that should be utilized, and also responsibilities, human responsibilities, communities responsibilities, organization responsibilities. So for dealing with all the human related aspects of emergency, when we are that one identified, when we are that utilized, nothing but of the emergency conditions. So in particularly having states of preparedness and response recovery, these are the main steps or main phases, main stages for reduce the impact of disaster. Any disaster reduction process or prevention process in reducing of impacts will be depending upon different stages or different phases. Those are the preparedness and response recovery. So disaster management is well planned technique for reducing hazards. So yes, everyone know disaster management must ensure it will be a well planned new technique for reducing impacts, reducing of the hazards, or maybe severity of the hazards, reducing purpose. It should be requireable. So disaster related impacts of effects reducing purpose, the disaster management will be worked effectively or efficiently. So disaster management focus on planning to minimize the impact of disasters. So what should do disaster management? Focus on planning to minimize the impact of disaster. What may be any kind of disaster, the disaster impacts point of effects point of how to reduce, how to minimize the impacts of disaster particular point of particular concept purpose. It should be worked. Disaster management focused on the planning and to minimize the impacts of the disasters. So disaster management mostly save conservation of lives and property, environment and natural resources. So nothing but of the disaster management mostly save the life of the people's lives of the people's of property or maybe environmental area. Most water maybe having what kind of natural resource will be there. Those all resources will be prevented by the disaster management. So it include coordination, command, control, fast recovery, repairing of the damage and communication system, transportation system. So in this particular point of including some coordinations, different community in between different communities, and also command and the organization, nothing but of nation disaster management agency organizations, control of the disaster, faster recovery, maybe disaster creating negative impact, drastical conditions, there has to be faster recovery. What have to be damaged by the maybe transportation or maybe communication system or maybe agriculture areas, what have to be affected in disaster time, those are all fast recovery. So repairing of the damaged communication system, transportation system, already we are discussing this particular topic, this particular concept also, or maybe point also. So involved in this particular disaster time, involved NDRF team, National Disaster Response Force team will be involved, give their services, providing their services. SDRF, State Disaster Response Force team, also be involved in that disaster time. Rescue teams, nothing but for the victims will be there in bottom of the houses or building particles, or maybe who have to be struck in of the flood conditions. So based on the disaster point of who are the victims will be those victims, rescue point of save the lives point of their life saving purpose, they have the rescue team will be involved. So medical team will also be involved because of maybe who are the people will be injured seriously, or maybe physically or mentally, who are the people will be affected, those may be having any diseases will be there, or any problems will be there, health related effects will be there, those have to be recovering purpose, or maybe that problem solving purpose, medical team also be involved and also provide the service also. And provided food, the primary needs, nothing but provided food, drinking water, shelters, maintain law and order equally. So at that disaster time we having facing three problems: not having proper food, not having proper drinking water, not having shelter, not having clothes. So what having requirement of the primary needs, the primary should be provided for the victims will be there, particularly who are affected the disaster condition, the disaster time, those people's requirements fulfill. Must ensure in the way of providing food, in the way of providing drinking water, in the way of providing shelter, in the way of providing maintenance law and order equally. Not to be having variation. Some rich persons one type of treatment, middle class person one type of treatment, and lower class people have to try one type of treatment. So everyone here equal, maintain law and order equally. So India most affected with different types of disasters like cyclones and floods, landslides, droughts, geoclimatic conditions are main caused. So our Earth, our India is nothing but of the subcontinent. So these kind of subcontinental features, mostly these climatic conditions, one of the main causes of the different types of the disasters. For example, cyclone, number of cyclones we are facing at rainy season. At the same time, those cyclones are producing heavy rainfall. That heavy rainfall maximum produced by the cause for the floods. So maybe landslides also because of that rainy season. Number of rainfalls will be displacement of the land to the gravitation forces point of increasing density point of moisture content point of we having facing by the landslides. Now the drought conditions, such a long time not having any rainfall, so we are facing drought conditions. So entire these kind of disasters will be happen due to cause of the climate, Indian climatic conditions. Next one. So see here, he see here we are identifying. We have to visual for the different types of the disaster management cycle images. The first one represented by the disaster management phases. First image represented by the different disaster management phases. So each and every disaster management cycle have different types of phases: response, recovery, mitigation, preparedness. So and also every disaster management cycle must and should having phases: response, recovery, mitigation, preparedness. So maybe we have before the disaster, after disaster, at the disaster time, some of the precautions we should be followed. Maximum control by the disaster effects also. So second image represented by the capacity building or pre-impact emergency restoration and also reconstruction. So mitigation in the cycle of the mitigation, preparation, response, recovery. So disaster management cycle, water may be mitigation represented by the capacity of the building, preparedness represented by the pre-impact, and response represented by the emergency. So recovery represented by the restoration and the reconstruction. So different type of each and every phase, every stage, maximum to prevent, controlling, severity of the disaster point of view will be helpful and useful also. Next one. So see here represented by the different types of the climatic conditions, the different type of the images will be represented. So see here, first one is nothing but of the flood, nothing but of the sea waves, tidal waves will be there. So next one is nothing but of the very drought conditions, very sedimentation areas, nothing but of the lack of water resource content areas. Third image represented by the nothing but of the flood water point of river flowing point of. And next one, fourth image represented by the nothing but of landslide area. So fifth one represented by the after flood point of maybe earthquake zones, earthquake areas, sorry, otherwise earthquake areas, most affected areas. And also sixth represented by the same landslides or landslide or maybe land displacement point of. Seventh image represented by the forest fire, wildfires. So eighth one represented by the cyclones image, or maybe ninth one represented by the glaciers melt, ice melting conditions, ice melting processes. So each and every image represented one disaster. So different kind of disasters has to be applicable point of Indian climatic conditions point of. So maybe cyclones, or maybe floods, or maybe droughts, or maybe forest fire, or maybe landslides, or maybe wildfires, or maybe earthquakes. So maybe melting of the ice, glaciers melting, different kind of problems have to be there due to cause of the climatic and difficult climatic conditions. Subtropical of India, Indian subtropical climatic conditions mostly caused for the different kind of disasters and effects point of. So next one, very important crucial topic, very important, Disaster Management Act. So Disaster Management Act was passed by the Lok Sabha on 28th November 2005 and the Rajya Sabha 12th December 2005. So it received the assistant of the President of India on 9th 1 so 2006. So first of all, what happened here? Disaster Management Act established by the or maybe that bill was proposed or passed by the Lok Sabha. So on the 28th November 2005. So Lok Sabha means nothing but of the number of MPs. MPs will be represented at one. The MLAs has to be one by third person. One by third person will be satisfied or maybe voted or raised their hands. So then that bill will be passing to the Rajya Sabha. So nothing but of here Rajya Sabha point of nothing but of the maybe business related experts or maybe sports related experts. Maybe cultural related some of the respected persons those will be involved in that one. Those peoples also be given those peoples also what we are making bill that will be satisfied. They have to be voting of the one by third person have to be elected that one. So maybe nothing but of the 100%, for example 100% peoples will be there. In Lok Sabha also 70%, 75% peoples are has to be satisfied, has to be promote that bill. So that bill has to send for the Rajya Sabha. So that person also be that will be elected, or maybe that person also be satisfied, and also promoting they have to satisfy, they have to give maybe they have to be given the vote 70 percentage of the 70% also 70 75% people are agree that one bill. So that bill has to pass to the President of India. So then finally that President of India analysis and identified and read should be carefully. It will be helpful, it will be most not having any effects, not having any defects. So it will be helpful for the society, for the country. So this should be approved. So like that also Disaster Management Act 28/11/25 approved by the Lok Sabha. So 12 December 2005 approved by the Rajya Sabha, and finally President of India approved by the 9/1/2006. That act will be implemented. That act calls for the establishment of the National Disaster Management Authority (NDMA), National Disaster Management Authority, with the Prime Minister of the India as the chairperson. The act point of that who was the chairperson, the Prime Minister of India as the chairperson. That one, the NDMA not having more than 9 members at a time, including vice chairmen. So that team having 9 members, including of the vice chairman also be. So working time is 5 years only. So the NDMA is responsible for the laying down the policies, plans, and guidelines for disaster management and ensure a very timely and effectively response to the disaster. So the disaster management agency should be provided. Disaster management agency should be provided new rules and policies and plans. So ultimate aim is to reduce the disaster impact and severity of the disaster. So under the section 6 of the act is responsible for the laying down guidelines to be following by the state authorities in the drawing up the country plans. So what the National Disaster Management Agency given, NDMA given, that should be followed by the SDMA, State Disaster Management Agency. So that will followed by the Mandal Disaster Management Agency, and last one followed by the Mandal what the given guidelines, that should be followed by the Village Disaster Management Agency. So step by step, the guidelines will be followed by the Prime Minister too, and local normal person, local victim person up to it will be for it will follow it will be circulated. So final disaster management having different stages. So they having different stages of management of disaster can be broadly classified three. Pre-disaster stage preparedness is a crucial role, more important role, playing important role. Emergency stage or disaster phase, and post-disaster stage, rehabilitation recovery stage. Before the disaster, we should be prepared at prevention mitigation point of emergency stage. Must and should be followed by the mitigation measures, and post-disaster point of after disaster what we are affected, what we are lost, that should be rehabilitation or recovery stage. So finally, the different stages of disaster management. So the image first one represented by the crisis response, recovery, and prevention preparedness. So disaster, pre-disaster, and post-disaster. Pre-disaster, before the disaster, pre-disaster, after disaster, post-disaster. So the second image represented by the disaster. So the yellowish line entire the space will be represented by the after disaster response and recovery, and this one greenery is before the disaster prevention and mitigation. So whatever everywhere disaster management having by the different type of phases: response, recovery, mitigation, preparedness. Okay. So, dear students, in the way of we are simply discussing about Disaster Management Act, Disaster Management definition, disaster management phases. So, entire of the disaster management and mitigation point of so entire course point it will be most useful content, useful topic. If you having any doubts, please text me, and also give them and also have to be raise the questions classroom also have to be given good clarification, good content provide to you. So thank you very much.